Self-aware millennial. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Self-Aware Millennial. I am your host, J.Mix. By the time this episode premieres, it'll be November, so Halloween will be over. So hopefully some of y'all are not hungover or anything, and you're listening to this the morning after, and you got your little coffee and everything. But we'll see. But I actually don't really have many announcements at this point. I know that for sure. I'm excited that we're about 2 months away from saying goodbye to 2020 forever. 2020 has been a year, and it's definitely going to be a year that goes down in history, literally and metaphorically. And I just think that when I look back on this year in particular, it'll definitely, I feel like there will be probably, I wonder if there'll be like books that are written just about this year alone, like some award-winning, like Nobel Peace Prize winning books. Who knows? Just thinking in the future, even though we're not there yet, but it's always good to plan for the future. But yeah, y'all, I really just want to get into it. This is going to be a little bit different than my last couple of episodes that you've been witnessing. We're still going to have like our cool, cute little segments or everything, but we have a special guest, and I just want to make sure that you guys get to know him as much as I'm getting to know him, because this is like literally the first time we've had a conversation that wasn't over email. But I want to introduce you all to Thane Marcus Ringler. And tell me, did I say that all right?
That was it. You nailed it.
Perfect. Yeah, Thane is like a fellow self-aware millennial himself. He's an author, husband, fellow podcaster, performance coach, public speaker, former pro golfer, entrepreneur goals, go-getter, like everything. So Thane, because that was like, that's what I thought you were, but maybe I missed something. Would you like to tell the audience, what else you do, or just kind of go into detail about what you do?
No, I think you did a great job. It's kind of a mixed bag, as you mentioned. It's a handful of things right now, which has trade-offs. It has good things and bad things about it, but the main focus is being a development and performance coach, like you mentioned, working with individuals on helping them live and work better. And a lot of that stems from taking kind of the professional athlete's mindset to people in their work and in their lives. And that's been a really fun, unique, and interesting journey. I never would have planned any of that. And then I also do speaking, and I write as well and host a podcast like you. So it's a mixed bag. And it has been a really interesting year, as it has been for everyone. And I added more change and interest to it by getting married and moving to Denver in March, where my wife and I now live. So it's been quite the year.
Awesome. I love Denver. I went there last year for the first time. It was a really nice vibe. It's nothing like Louisiana, which I love. And they probably have seasons where you are.
They do. We just actually, I can look out the window right here and see about 5-6 inches of snow still on the building next to me. We had a flash storm come through. I know.
That's crazy.
It was wild. But it'll be like mid to high 60s this weekend, so it's still pretty nice. And we have pretty mild winter, surprisingly. I never expected it to be as mild as it is, but there's more sunshine in Denver than most places in the US outside of maybe like Phoenix. But it's a really sunny place and pretty mild climate, which has been fun. But seasons are great. I grew up in Kansas, so I was in LA for about 10 years, and I didn't have seasons there, so I really did miss like a fall and spring season. So I'm excited to have it back now.
Awesome. Well, so tell me about Kansas, because I think I went to Kansas once when I was a belle, and I remember it being pretty plain. I forgot which part of Kansas we were in, but I don't know. Every time I think of Kansas, obviously I think about tornadoes, and I remember I used to be so scared of tornadoes when I was a child. Like I used to have full-on like nightmares. And every time they even said like New Orleans that there would be a tornado warning, like I would just freak out, because I'm thinking about all of those tornado movies I watched as a child that I probably shouldn't have been watching on TNT. What is that? Do you remember the name of that movie that they used to?
Twister.
Twister.
Twister, yeah. Yeah, that one's a classic. The more recent one is Sharknado. I didn't see that, but it's just like the most outrageous concept. It's
Oh.
combining sharks and tornadoes. So, I mean, that is pretty terrifying, but
Yeah. But
yeah.
so like in Kansas, did y'all experience tornadoes of that nature? Like y'all had your little game plan together whenever one was going to be like coming your way, or like how does that
Yeah,
work?
yeah. Most people in Kansas have basements or some type of storm shelter. So that's like the biggest key with tornadoes, just having someplace underground or someplace without windows that you can go in and hang out in until it passes. The thing about tornadoes is pretty, it's limited in its scope, meaning it's a specific area that it hits. So while it can go anywhere within that area, it's a smaller point of damage, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like every storm, I mean, earthquakes in California, hurricanes down where you are, tornadoes in the Midwest. I mean, they all have their dangers to them, and we get comfortable and familiar with them, and then we learn how to handle them. And it is pretty, in some ways, awe-inspiring, you know, to see this force of nature that we have no control over and we're totally helpless against.
Yeah.
It's really humbling, and I think we need that as humans. We get pretty
Yes.
big egos and full of ourselves, think we're pretty hot stuff, but tell you what, Mother Nature, the earth, and creation can just really humble us and put us in our place pretty quick.
Yep. That's how I felt. I mean, especially even just with like coronavirus, I like that. Just kind of, you know, we all know how that went. So outside of what you do, like I should say on a regular, what do you do for a living thing? Like what is like your main like I don't know,
Yeah.
like I just want to I just want to check and just
Yeah,
make sure,
you know,
like,
it's been primarily the coaching, and then I have done in the past. I've done two other things in LA. I was doing some modeling commercial work, and that was a nice thing on the side just to get some money. And then that started when I was playing golf still, and then I also started a side business as a coffee business in LA. So I worked as a barista in the off season when I was playing golf because I love coffee in the industry. It's just a fun space, and I needed something to give me a little diversity. I didn't want to play golf all year round nonstop and that be everything that I do. And so I needed some space, something different that I could just not have my mind engaged in the sport and the profession. So I started working in cafe as barista and loved it. It's just a fun service, you know, and you get to be with customers, interact with other people, and enjoy the
people
craft.
love you when you're about to give them caffeine.
Yes. And so it's a great job, and I loved it. But coming out of golf, I knew that I wanted to find something that was more worth my time money wise. As a barista, part time, it doesn't pay as well as maybe I was hoping it would, right? Time wise.
Yeah.
So I decided to start a small business called Collaboration Coffee. It was a portable espresso bar for events and weddings. And so by doing that, it was a really fun experience to get some small business experience to better serve my clients I work with.
Yeah.
But also still make some more money. And it kind of served as a marketing front too, because it was a way to get in front of more people and talk about some of the things I'm up to and just make more connections through that. So that was a really fun journey. And then with COVID, that obviously, and the move, it's kind of all shut down. So that's still in storage, and I'm not sure if I will be picking that back up. But the cool thing about getting married now is that my wife has helped me kind of hone in my focus a little bit more on like, you know, something that can be sustainable. And so the focus had been primarily on the coaching business now and getting enough community here in Denver, because most of my client base is referral, is a referral based clients. So I get it from word of mouth from other people I've worked with usually. And so by forming more communities and relationships here in Denver, I'm slowly but surely building that funnel back up to where that'll be more sustainable. And with the 2 online courses that are coming out this next month, I think that'll be also a great funnel just to have some sustainability for our family. Because now that there's 2 of us and not just me, it's a different mode of thinking that's really good for me, because I need to be thinking more about sustainability and how can we provide for future family when God blesses us with that. So it's been a shift in my thinking, but it's been really helpful and healthy. And I'm excited to keep focusing on the coaching work, because I really, it's something I really believe in and something I'm really passionate about. And it's a joy to be able to do.
Awesome. So what made you move to Denver? Like, was there anything in particular? Or you just like, I just want to move somewhere that's not California or Kansas?
Well, I love both California and Kansas as disclaimers, but for us, I had a fairly large community in LA that God blessed me with, and that was a really sweet thing. But my family's in Kansas, and my wife's family's in Bozeman, Montana, and so Denver was in between both of those. It's like a 9-hour drive to Bozeman, 7 hours to Kansas, where I grew up, and so we were closer to family.
Okay.
And we thought that Denver could be a really good place for us to build our community together. It's always harder when one comes into another person's pre-existing community.
Yeah.
And my wife had only been in Denver for 2 years at this point. So it would just make more sense for us to start our family in Denver. Most of what I'm doing can be done anywhere. And so it
Yeah.
made sense that we'd shift to Denver. And I've always kind of loved the mountains and wanted to live near the mountains. I'm a big snowboarder. So I have been dreaming of a winter where I live by the mountains for a long time. And here it is. So I'm pretty excited about
Yay!
that.
Awesome. So you're gonna be shredding what they call it, shredding.
Yes. Shredding the
Ooh.
gnar, as they call it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we have to do like a follow up and be like, so how did that work out?
Yeah,
Um,
it will be. It'll be a fun follow-up. Hopefully no broken bones.
let's hope for that. But if it does happen, I feel like at least everyone I know that has lived up there or has done anything of that nature, they've broken at least something. So I feel like that's
Mhm.
almost like a rite of passage. But let's not wish that anyway. But
I've
just
had
know
my
that.
3 broken wrists already, and a rib injury. So I've had my share. Even that's not to say I won't have it again, but I've had plenty. So my cup's full, you could say.
Oh man. So before we get into our little icebreaker, I wanted to also just know, because you do a lot. You're like working all the time, it feels like I'm just like what I see you doing, I'm like, how does he get to do, like, how could he do all these things? So how do you balance work with relaxation? Like, how do you balance the two, knowing that you, like you even just said, you just moved and y'all just trying to make like
Yeah.
get everything situated in Denver, and I'm just like, how, well, I guess with the quarantine it makes it a little easier because you kind of stuck at home, but
hmm
how do
Yeah. No, I
you
think
do that?
it's a great question, and really important to mention, because I think anytime we hear someone's story or tagline or job description, we get this idea that it's kind of an overnight thing, that it just happened in one moment, that they're a superhuman, and that they're just doing things because they're exceptionally gifted or whatever it may be. And rarely, if ever, is that true. We're all
Mhm.
just human, and we're all just trying to figure it out. And for me, the doing a lot of things doesn't happen by just saying, I'm going to pick up 5 balls and walk with them. Usually it means like, I'm going to pick up this one ball and try to figure it out and take steps forward. And then, oh, there's this other ball that's kind of similar and complementary to, so I'm going to pick that up with it and start moving forward with them both, to where then you realize like 3 years later, oh, I'm carrying 5 balls now, and I didn't realize it. But
Mhm.
because I had gained strength by carrying that one for a while, I was able to lift this other one and build that up, and then build strength, and it was, so it's a progressive thing, and it doesn't have, it's cumulative over time, I guess is the best
Yeah.
way to say it. So for me, it, from the outside looking in, it looks like I'm doing a ton of stuff, and it doesn't look feasible or attainable, and some of that is true, but not all of it, and not most of it, in the sense that it all is complementary. It fuels the overarching mission and purpose of reaching people, to help them take ownership and never settle, which is kind of the two things I'm all about. And it's solidified into that.
Yes.
Overdoing it, we figure things out by doing them. So
Yeah.
you learn by doing, right? And so that's been a lot of what the last 3 years have been, to where now I am able to maintain several balls at once,
Mhm.
because I've done 3 years of moving forward on each one at a time, to where then they've all been able to keep moving forward. But it is a dance. It's
Yeah.
not perfect. And, like you said, it has to be a balance between working and recovering. Just like our bodies, if we're going to go to the gym and get stronger, we can't just work out all the time. We have to rest and recover. And that's actually
Yeah.
how we get stronger. So that
Yes.
whole illustration that our body tells us is exactly, I think, how God's designed us, just in general, that we're going to be best when we, hey, have a Sabbath. We take a day off where we don't do any work. We sleep enough every night to where we're recharged for the next day. We have enough healthy
Mm.
balance between working during the day, but then having our evenings for ourselves. And that's been a cool rhythm with my wife now is really protecting evenings a lot more than I did before. And that's been super healthy for me. And if you're familiar with the Enneagram at all, I am
Yeah, a little bit. I've heard some people, they're like, you should take it, but I haven't done it yet.
it's, you know, there's so many personality test things.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those, but I do think it's one of the more helpful ones in that it's a little bit more holistic and it's a little bit more intuitive as it and less like your X, you know. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm a 3 is the number. I'm very much like a 3, which is the achiever, and a lot of America is achievement based. It's an achievement
Yeah.
based culture, so
Yeah.
it's extra dangerous for us to feed that. And to keep pouring into that, and it's like gasoline on a fire in a sense. So,
Yeah.
as someone that's already wired that way or disposed that way, it's really important for me to rest and recover. So, I love that you asked that question because it is essential for all of us.
Thanks. Well, actually, I think I may have mentioned this I don't remember where I mentioned this recently, but there is a cool Instagram that I just started following not too long ago. It's called the Nap Ministry, but they literally like all of their posts are about like, taking a rest. Like it's really nice. Like I like to go there and just kind of check and make sure that I'm doing the right things when it comes to me taking a break. Cause like you, like I just like to go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden I'm like worn out. And it's funny because like the other day, like I was literally like, I knew I was tired and I knew I needed to take a break, but like the rest of my brain is like, no, you got to finish this, you got to finish that. So it's kind of like, you're just like always toying between the two. And honestly, what I've done in that instance, I try to like force myself to nap. And usually after a nice nap, I have more clarity, I have more energy to do things. But like the funny thing is like my body, it just doesn't always communicate with my mind, unfortunately. So
And you're not alone. I think that's true for all of us. You know, the hardest part is belief, I think, because, you know, a lot of times we know what truth to preach to ourselves, right? We know in those
right,
moments that
right.
I need to do this and we can preach that, but until we believe it, we don't act on it. And believing in it is a daily battle. It's a daily challenge. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm the same way. I had a meeting with a guy a couple of weeks ago down here in Colorado Springs, and he's a pretty accomplished author and just a really great guy. And he was talking to me about this practice that he does with his office and his team, where at 10 and at 2 every day, they take a minute to pause and recenter and refocus. And they're Christians, so it's on Jesus, but the practice just in general
Still good.
is
It's
amazing, you know? And
yeah.
so, and for me, like, he shared the app with me. It's a pause app, I think is what it's called. And so I get reminders on my phone to do that. But just to your point, I still haven't committed to doing it daily, right? I still
Yeah.
haven't believed in it enough to actually follow through with it. It's been 2 weeks. And so, you know, I share that with you and all of us as humans that we often know what to do. It's just our belief in the effect and importance of doing it that is the difference. And I think it starts by us just being kind to ourselves and not shaming or guilting ourselves, saying, I didn't do this. I'm horrible. I'm the worst. I'm never going to get there. Like none of that is helpful. So we just have to say, you know what? I didn't reach that expectation or that hope yet, but I will, and it's worth it. I'm going to work on my belief so that I can follow through with it.
Yeah. I find that interesting only because I feel like, and I love to always just go back to like childhood and like how things were just so much more effortless and we like forgave ourselves and we fell and like scraped our knees. Just
Mm.
like, you're not like necessarily blaming yourself. Yes, you're going to cry because it hurts, but like, I don't know. I feel as though like we were definitely a lot more forgiving as children because like everybody around us, our peers that were also kids, they were also, messing up and still learning new things. So, like, but nowadays, like somewhere there's that switch and, you start getting criticized, whether it be like, I don't know, by your teacher because you're having failing grades or, your parents are pressuring you or, like you just have more responsibilities because people expect more of you as the older you get. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I just find that I wish that we could get back to that childlike mindset and forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
And not, but that's the issue is everybody else around us. Like, yes, we can do that for ourselves. And I think that's, again, accountability, as we were both like, we both hone in on a lot. But yeah, I think that's why it's always great to just be around kids sometimes, because like they will remind you about how small we actually really are and how forgiving we can be with each other.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that you brought that up, because I just did earlier today a podcast interview with a lady in Kansas City. And she was on my show for, she has a foundation called Braden's Hope, and it's supporting, helping fund childhood cancer research. And she has a really amazing story. But the point of it is that she was in education for a while, and she said, you know what? When she was teaching like kindergarten and then second grade for a bit, and then she became a principal, and then she got into the administrative side and was a director of HR for the school district. But she made an important point that, you know what I needed to help teach and learn from the kindergartners was the same for the directors. It was the same principles that applied. And it's so true that we lose this childhood innocence and beauty and wisdom that is found in simplicity, and we start getting in this complexity of life as adults. And I think the danger, like you're talking about, is we start becoming aware of what other people think of us. And that's the ultimate danger, is that if we just drop that, and we talk about this because her son is autistic. And the beauty of people that have autism is that they don't register the what other people think of them, right? And so they're able to be as pure and unadulterated and innocent in their view of the world and themselves. And from that, they show themselves way more grace and kindness, and others as well. And that is the ultimate lesson for us, is like, man, how do we just stop caring so much about what other people think and live what we know to be true? And that is the beauty found in kids that we need to remember and return to. And I love that you brought that up, because think about the amount of difference and change we can make in our lives and the lives of those around us when we live that way.
Yeah. I think, well, we're going to get into that, because like, again, that could technically be a whole other episode. And I've been meaning to at some point do like a childhood innocence episode, and I might get your input on that.
That'd be good.
The next, yeah. But let's start our little icebreaker. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of ice broken just now, but I do want to do my little ponytail segment now. I know you can't wear a ponytail or anything, but we're just going to imagine you have one.
Okay.
And
I did have a man bun at one point, so.
Oh, dang. Darn it. Well, you had one. I love me a man bun, but that's just me. I have a bun right now too.
Nice.
But all right, y'all. Ponytails, if you are just joining us for the first time, ponytails with tails spelled T-A-L-E-S is an icebreaker where I ask my friends to tell a tale with a ponytail in their head. I give the name of the topic, and then we both share our ponytail. So the ponytail I want to talk about today, just because I feel like we're both around the same age and we can kind of still remember this, our quarter life crisis, quote unquote, and how it has aided in our self-awareness journey. So did you have a quarter life crisis? And if so, tell me about it and how it aided in like where you are right now.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's very real. And mine was interesting in the sense that I was playing, at the time I was playing professional golf, and I'd been playing for about three years at that point, 3.5 years. And I had planned on 3 years and then reevaluating with my team of investors and sponsors and coaches and friends and family. And so when I reached this point, it kind of was a crisis in the sense that the last 1.5 years of my career, I had a muscle strain in my back in my left rhomboid that had repeated 5 times every 1.5 years and was pretty debilitating and frustrating. And I just didn't know if I'd be able to play pain-free golf again, honestly.
Yeah.
And so as I was sitting there trying to figure out, is it golf or is it something else? You're faced with kind of an identity crisis. And I think a lot of that quarter life crisis is that, right? Of, who am I and what am I supposed to do in the world? And so I was sitting with that question for like 2 months. And the question that I was asking myself was, who have I been created, equipped, and called to be? And I sat with it for a couple months, and I really felt that I could be more effective outside the world of golf than within it. based on my personality, my strengths and weaknesses, my experiences. I just thought that I wasn't really a golf nerd. I didn't absolutely obsess over the sport. I was a competitor. I loved competing, and that was kind of my outlet for it. But
Mhm.
I love so many different things and wanted to provide more help to others. And golf was so self-focused. I thought maybe there's another path could be more fulfilling and being others focused. And so I decided to pivot and felt called to kind of be a voice to the next generation. As vague and big as that is, I still don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily important what it means. It just means that was a direction that I wanted to embark upon.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been a process figuring out. But yeah, that quarter life crisis was real. And I think it's real for most people, especially in the world we grow up in.
Yeah.
And I think as I've thought back on it and as I've reflected on it, it really revolves around identity. And the biggest thing that I learned and that I would encourage others with in that is that identity struggles come when we start associating our identity with what we do instead of who we are.
Mm.
And for so long, that was what I did. And I think we all do, in the sense that when I played golf for my whole life and professionally for biz, I was a professional golfer, right? So my
Yeah.
identity is now.
Was the golfer and not I feel that. I know
And
that.
so, how can we return to having our identity as human beings, who I am as a human being, not what I do, not what I look like, not what I'm trying to
Yes.
accomplish or have accomplished, but who I am at my core, just a fellow human being on this journey of life. And how can we just ground in that core base identity? And I think that can be that can unlock the freedom for us to make pivots when necessary.
Yeah. I share almost a similar story to you in that regard with my quarter life crisis, but I would say like I was just so busy up until graduation from college, and I had my quarter life crisis like around that time of graduating college. Because I was like, oh God, I've been in school my whole life, and I have never had to really think about what am I going to be doing afterwards. Like I was a performer. I did a lot of musical theater. I was on stage all the time, everywhere, everyone's theater. I was on it, and that was my identity. That's what people knew me as, and there were parts of me that were like I was doing it so that I wouldn't have to confront other parts of like me as a person. And then like, and I think that was interesting, especially with a lot of performers, is it's interesting because a lot of them get really upset once a show ends, or they'll just like be kind of sad or depressed, and they're like, oh, I can't wait till the next show, so that they're doing something else, not necessarily just because they love what they do, but there was also just it's kind of like that down period where you have to actually live with yourself and like figure out like who you are and what you're doing and whatnot, and like prepare for the next thing. But like always being in these shows, especially me, like I wasn't able to really do that because I had a show after a show after a show. I remember, however, before I graduated college, and this was like back in 2014, but like I remember specifically getting really I remember feeling anxious, and this was before I started taking Zoloft, like way before. So I just remember thinking to myself, you second guess yourself. You're like, okay, am I how can I say this best? Am I worth it? Am I worth it enough to like continue going on the path that I think I want to go on? Because even when you're in college, there's a lot of folks that are getting degrees that they don't necessarily want, or they don't feel like they're going to take further. And not that my degree that I had wasn't anything I wasn't going to do afterwards after I graduated, but I had like a lot of suspicion, and there were certain parts of my creativity as an artist where I was like, I don't know if I really want to become an opera singer, which is what I was going to school for basically. And I wasn't completely sure if I wanted to like do full on musical theater either. I just knew that I wanted to be an artist of some sort and create. So I just know that my quarter life crisis, it was bad. And I knew it kind of like, it whipped me up into shape, kind of got me to where I was now. And I think the crisis in particular only lasted like maybe a week, but like me getting out of that, it took a couple of years. Like I knew like it was inside me. I knew what I needed to do, but like actually taking action and doing something about it, it took a couple of years because I was trying to keep myself busy to like not have to worry about it. But
yeah, what did
here we
you
are.
find to be most helpful for you in that journey or transition?
Honestly, and I say this all the time, the first time that I ever had a chance to just sit down and be one with myself and like figure out what I want for me, like personally as me, Jessica, was when I had to admit myself into a mental health hospital. It was the first time I had ever not had to have my phone. I didn't have to worry about anyone around me. I didn't have family that I was worried about. I didn't have like anything. Like I literally was in there for me, and I was able to like just reroute like everything in my brain, like almost like it was like a reset.
Mm.
Um, but that was honestly, and that was about 3 years ago, almost about 3 years ago. Since then, the way that I maneuver throughout the world, I always just check back with myself if I actually want to do it or not. Before, I just wanted to make the other person happy. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make everyone else like, pleased with what I was doing, but not necessarily thinking about like, okay, like I would do that for other people, but I may also feel bad myself. And the main thing is I didn't want me to feel bad about what I was doing or feel like anxious or whatever. I wanted to make sure I was cool with it. So yeah, that was my quarter life crisis. But I want to quickly talk about, because we're both very self-aware people, but I feel like we may have both different definitions of what self-awareness is. So you as a coach, what is your personal definition of self-awareness, and how do you incorporate it with your work as a coach with others?
Totally. Well, thanks for sharing. That's a powerful story. And I think, just by sharing, we get to, one, see it in new light, and two, also just empower and encourage so many others when we are speaking what we've experienced and what other people inevitably experience as well. So I love that you share that so powerfully. Self-awareness is huge. And yes, it plays a huge part of my work with individual clients and of what I write and speak to as well. My definition of self-awareness is, it kind of goes back to identity, is are you in integrity, really? Are you living as a person you say you are or that you want to be? That's what integrity is. And self-awareness means you're in alignment to your identity and living with integrity in that. So you're aligned and attached
Yes.
to that person of who you say you are and who you want to be. And, there's a great book. Timothy D. Wilson wrote a book called Strangers to Ourselves. Really fascinating, kind of deep dive into the science behind it. And it's all about understanding the adaptive unconscious, the subconscious mind. And he really makes a point that if you dive too far into self-awareness, into too deep into the chasm of it, you start realizing more and more how little control we have over our lives, because our subconscious runs most of it. Now, the deeper you dive, the more depressing that gets, because it's like, well, then, what's the point of it anyways? And that's not helpful. What is,
Right.
and I like to call that hyper awareness. That's the dark side, right? And I think we've all been there. Like, there's been times where, like when I'm playing golf back in the day, when if I'm hyper aware of what I'm doing, I'm not doing it to the best of my ability, because I'm so focused on analyzing and seeing every part of my swing and how I'm moving the moment or what other people are doing, that I'm not actually in the moment. It's taking me out of it.
Yeah.
And so this understanding between the difference between self-awareness and hyper-awareness is really helpful to know, that the helpful form of self-awareness is when we can act more like the person we want to be. And that's how Timothy Wilson ended his book. His deep dive was like, you know what? The most important thing is you just acting like the person you want to be, because then you're aligning who you say you are and who you are more and more so, to where when those are in full alignment, right, that's health. That's where we're living healthy and holistically. And I think what the example even you shared from your journey is that we all experience that when we start having like an inability to recognize what we want or what we feel or who we are. And that happens because we start caring more about what other people think and what the culture says and the status quo and what's prescribed or expected of us. Then that alignment becomes more and more detached, right? And that leads to really tough, hard places, and where we feel very unhealthy. And so to get that health and that realignment, a lot of it is just living more like acting more like the person we want to be. And through that, we become aligned with our identity and living with integrity. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Cool. That's so okay. So how do you like start acting? You just be like, I don't know, do you like, I guess for me, I'm a visual person. So like I would probably draw a picture of myself and be like, these are the things I want to be to other people. And then start just, I don't know, holding myself accountable to make sure that I'm doing that for others.
This is great. So self-awareness, I think, to make it simple and actionable for people, I think that, and this is what I talk about in the course as well, is that there's a simple process and then there's tools we can use. And by understanding both of these things, I think we can all grow in it very effectively. And it's not novel or new that I came up with. It's just what we all know. And it's just putting words to it.
Yeah.
So the process, I like to describe it as past, present, and future. And in other words, it's discovering, it's understanding, and then it's optimizing. So what that means is the discovering phase, we have to sit down and look back, right? We have to reflect on what happened, why it happened, how we felt, how it affected us, and what that resulted in our lives. Understanding that takes sitting down and looking back, discovering. And for me in golf, for the example of golf, you know, I made the habit and the commitment to, after every tournament round, I would sit down and journal about it and just reflect and learn. Because if I didn't do that, I would actually repeat the same mistakes over and over again until I did, right? So by sitting down, discovering and understanding it, then I started repeating those mistakes less. The understanding part is in the moment, right? So the first is discovering, is looking back at the past. The understanding is, how can I understand how I operate in the moment in real time, to where we're in this conversation now and maybe there's a noise outside and I turned and looked and I lost my train of thought. And then I'm like, okay, where's she at? And so maybe that happened to where now I'm able to recognize, like, okay, next time a noise happens, don't look outside the window, stay focused, you know? So that's recognizing it in real time. It's understanding how we operate in different situations, environments in the moment that they're happening.
Gotcha.
The optimizing is saying, okay, I've done the work, I've put in the reps of discovering by looking back enough, and now I'm understanding myself more clearly in the moment, so much so that now I can look forward into the future and see future situations or times where I know I often operate like this, but I want to operate like this. Gotcha. So now I'm going to prime myself so that I'm optimized for that situation. Say it's, you know, a hard conversation with a family member. I know that I often get worked up and emotional and frustrated or angry or whatever because I care about them so much and they care about me so much and we feel really strongly about this issue or whatever.
Yeah.
So because of that, I'm going to preach the truth to myself that, you know what? I know this person loves me. I know I love them. I know that this conversation doesn't define our relationship and that our hearts are love. And so we're going to approach this and I'm going to allow my emotions to be less affected and my identity less attached to this conversation so I can operate better within it. So that's an example of optimizing for the future.
That's a perfect example. Oh my God.
We're all facing that right now in a million ways, right?
Oh man. And I was just talking about that with my last guest, Christian, from the other episode. I was talking about how I had, with my sister, I had to remember that overall, because I know also she was diagnosed with ADD. And it's harder for her to understand certain things, and I have to be patient. And that's kind of like me remembering like the future of this all, knowing that I love her as a sister, and that, again, this conversation does not define anything. And I have to be I guess it's more on me where I have to just make sure that I am present and understanding, one, to see like what she needs, knowing that I can't explain it to her like I do everybody else. Like I have to do it in a special way so that she is understanding of it. And I mean, that's just me, like also just thinking about like, because in the future, it's always going to be like that. I just always have to just think about like, you know, I'm trying to preserve the future by making sure that the present goes well. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And you know what I love about what you just shared is that the example you just gave is you taking ownership. And that's what this is all about to me is us taking ownership for our thoughts, actions, and behaviors. And that's why self-awareness matters so much, because if we can't recognize what we need to take ownership for or what we're not taking ownership for, then we'll never be able to grow in that, and we'll never be able to take full ownership of our lives. So the whole
Yes.
point of taking ownership is being able to recognize, and the whole way we recognize is by being self-aware.
Yes.
And
Yes.
today, as you know, right, the whole point of your show, right? And in
Yeah.
today's world, the reason why your show is so important is because there are so many distractions. There's so much noise that it's so hard to sit with ourselves and understand and hear and know ourselves, like you were
Right.
saying before. And it's not, the reality is it's not going to happen by chance. It
Right.
never happens by chance. It takes effort and intention, which is why
Yes.
it's ultimately a discipline. And
Yeah.
so if we're going to become and grow in self-awareness, which is a life, we're never going to stop growing in that. We can never stop growing in self-awareness. And if we're going to be on that lifelong journey, then it takes discipline to choose it and make that choice and then put in the effort to make it happen.
Yes. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about how this whole platform kind of started, but I think what was interesting, it started back in February, and not even a month later we were into quarantine. And so it's just like we were all forced to almost become self-aware ourselves because we had nothing else to really look forward to at the moment. Like, everyone was kind of stuck and they had to be with themselves, and finally had a chance, a lot of people, to just kind of sit and really look at themselves and not have to worry about their jobs or anything of that nature. So I don't know, I think I didn't really think about it, but this platform started right at the brink of where the world kind of just had to stop and look at themselves and become self-accountable. And yeah, I'm gonna have to really start. I'm gonna have to reflect on that a little bit because I never really thought about it that way. But when you said that's the first thing that triggered my psyche on that. So before we kind of close out, I want to have another. It doesn't have to be a lengthy discussion, but I like to get uncomfortable on this show, and I want to kind of talk about our differences, because we obviously have differences. Obviously we're the same because we're both very self-aware people, and I think we're both super, we like to talk, I think. I mean, podcasters, that's just kind of our niche.
It's scratching our own itch. Yes.
Yeah. But I do want to kind of discuss a few, just so we get a little uncomfortable. And, I know the listeners are going to be like, oh, Lord, here she goes again. But it's fine. They know me by now, and I will just come up with any sort of uncomfortable thing at the drop of a dime. But what I want to talk about right now first is just kind of talking about some of our elephants in the room. So I kind of want to just discuss things that we know kind of about ourselves, but might find discomfort in bringing up. I know the first thing that came up for me was just the fact that I'm a Black woman and you're a white man. But maybe there's more. I know I kind of want to just discuss that just a little bit. It doesn't have to be too much. But I know that both of our upbringings may have been a little different. You were in Kansas, and I don't know if did you live in the city portion of any of Kansas cities, or did you live
it's a town or city called Hutchinson that's about 45,000 people. So it's not super small. It's not big. It's a small town. I mean, there's places in Kansas that have 1,500 people. So, that's super small. This is kind of we have your typical chain stores and all that, but it's also not a destination anyway. And we don't have a huge airport. So we have to drive to Wichita, about 45 minutes away. And that's 300, 400,000 people for the airport. So that was kind of the context.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I kind of just want to talk about right quick, just the fact that we probably have the same. Ooh, I didn't realize my phone was still making noise. My B. I want to talk about just the fact that, I don't know, I grew up in the hood, even though it doesn't sound like I grew up in the hood, but I grew up around there. And my thing was my parents were very protective of me and my sisters, where I wanted to play with a lot of the kids, but they were very much my parents would be like, you shouldn't, because then you'll go down the same path that they were just really protective. And I guess I want to talk about, I don't know why I even mentioned that just now. I kind of want to talk about like our upbringings and how it led us to where we are. And I want to bring the race factor in there just because I feel that it is important. I think I wanted to also just be an encouragement to both of our audiences in a way of it is attainable, no matter if you're a white man or you're a Black woman. But I want to talk about the differences and how we got to where we are now.
Totally.
So I'll start with you. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really important conversation. So I'm glad that you brought it up, and I think it's important to recognize our heritage and where we come from, because that shapes 99.9% of who we are, honestly. And I always like sharing this quote by Bill Simon, who said, "I was born on third base and thought I hit a triple." And I share that because I want to lead with that. And most of the times when I'm sharing any words, because I want to give people a context that I didn't choose the family I was born into. I didn't choose the place I was born into. I didn't choose the opportunities I was given. Those were all outside of my own doing. And I can't take responsibility for any of that. But I do have a responsibility in what I do with that. And so my goal is to use that to the best of my ability, whatever that is. And to say that, to put my experience on other people that have, every single person on this planet has had vastly different experiences from day one. And so there's no way that I'm going to see the world the same as someone else, someone like you or my wife or anybody that is completely different. Now, I think to mention, we'll start with upbringing. The upbringing fact, like I was extremely blessed, not only to grow up in a home that was middle to upper middle class, but in the sense that I had two parents that loved me and that supported me and that encouraged me and gave me, just positive love and encouragement my whole life. Like that's something that a lot of people nowadays don't have. And that is such a detriment to our ability to succeed in life. That's just a reality. Like you can look at the science and studies behind it, but human love and affection and care in our earliest years have massive effects on who we become. And so the fact that I had that was just an incredible blessing. And to this day, I feel so blessed by my parents and the work that they did in just supporting and raising me and giving me every chance in the world to succeed in that. And that's something that, I don't take for granted for at all. And with that, each step of the way, even to this day, I am not where I am because of my own doing. It's because of the support and help of all the people along the way, my coaches, my mentors, my parents, my family, my siblings, and all of the effort and money and attention and love that they gave me have made me the person that I am today.
And community.
Then I've played a role in my part of that, and that's it. And I think it's just really important to recognize that. And then to speak to the white and Black and man and woman, the reality is that there is very different experiences for different types of people in America, and they have been drastically different. And to be honest with you, I'm really grateful for this year because my eyes have been opened a lot to the differences that I never knew. I mean, growing up in Hutchinson, we had a large Black and Hispanic community. And, so I was around a lot of different ethnicities, but I never thought about the different experiences that those different ethnicities had in our country. And it wasn't until this year that our church did a lot of great things in their series on it. And reading a lot and learning a lot and having conversations with friends of mine that are Black, just learning about the experience and the differences has been really eye-opening and humbling. And I just finished reading Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And I mean, what an amazing gift that book is, and just showing us an example of what life used to be like and how you don't go from there to here with it being completely gone, right? It's not gone. It's just been changing forms, and there's been progress. I think that can be said, but I think that there's still a long ways to go. And it's also been interesting. I'll stop talking here in a sec. But the other thing that's been interesting is
keep going.
The other thing that's interesting is, even being married now has been such a gift to me in understanding more of the difference between men and women. Like, again, before marriage, I didn't really understand as fully the differences in opportunity from men to women. And
did you have sisters or like anyone that you grew up with, or?
Yeah, I have an older
Okay,
sister, 2 years older, and
gotcha.
she's amazing. And I think I didn't realize it as much with her because she's gone an unconventional path, and she is kind of
Okay,
like a go-getter, and she's done really well. But at the same time, I didn't really have these conversations with her either, to where like, what's your
gotcha.
experience been as a woman versus a man,
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
now that I'm married and having more of those conversations, understanding what my wife has gone through, it's like, wow, this is sad the way that our world and country has operated in this realm, and there's a long ways to go in that too.
yeah.
And so I think these are really important conversations. I'm glad that you bring it up, and I'm also curious to hear your perspective and thoughts on that as well.
Well, I always ask because I'm always just curious, especially when I talk to white people. They're just like, a lot of them don't necessarily hang out with black folks ever. Or like for me, like I am around them all the time. Like everywhere I go, I'm usually the minority in a room, whether I'm at the coffee shop, whether I am at my job or anywhere. So it's always just interesting to hear perspectives on folks
Mm-hmm.
that is not the case, where they walk anywhere, they go anywhere, and they are already, they see themselves represented, not just like in person, but like, I don't know, like in a magazine or just anywhere. um so I was just curious to see like what your comfortability level was on discussing that. And I'm just also curious, like, do you have black friends? Do you
Yeah,
have black friends?
yeah, I think well, you make a great point. Like, we naturally associate with people we're like, right? It's
Yeah,
easier to make friends with
absolutely.
people that you're alike. So I think that's the first thing, is like, I think naturally we will all be that way. Now, the
Yeah.
goal then is to pursue diversity in thought and in
Mm-hmm.
background, ethnicity, because that makes us more well-rounded and balanced humans ultimately. And
Yeah.
what's funny, I do have some black friends, which has been a huge blessing. And
Mm-hmm.
I got to be a part of a program in LA called Good City Mentors, and we did a program with some formerly incarcerated youth from East LA,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a wide range of people. But what I really learned from that was, I learned from them and their experiences that regardless of your color, if you're born in an area that in an environment where you have zero positive influences in your life, and the deck is
Mm-hmm.
literally stacked against you,
Yeah.
it is extremely hard to break something that has gone on for cycles and generations.
Yeah.
And it's so inspiring, the people that are able to break a generational cycle, whatever that is,
Yeah.
because that is 10 times more impressive than anything I've done, truly.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife has been volunteering at a shelter here in Denver for homeless. It's a day shelter for homeless women and children and transgender. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's so fascinating. I've been learning through her is that homelessness is often a generational thing, just like other forms of poverty or oppression or systemic difficult challenges. And we often think, oh, it's something they chose or bad decisions. Like, no, like a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
they're born into this.
Yeah.
And breaking that is just insurmountable at times. And so living, I think what you mentioned about your experience as well is, I think, a really important thing to highlight. I did a series on my podcast about this very topic, especially this summer, when the focus has been on that a lot, which is it is needed.
Yeah.
A friend of mine brought up the concept that I'd never heard of black privilege, in the sense that black privilege is that you've had the privilege of learning both your common heritage and experience and the white common heritage and experience. As a white
Mm-hmm.
person, I've only learned one, right? Growing up, I didn't learn the other side. I
Yeah.
didn't learn the experiences and stories of someone growing up in this country as a black person.
Yeah.
And so he
That's
framed it
interesting. I
as
never heard of that, but that makes sense.
so
Yeah.
he framed it as it's in a sense, he coined, I don't know if it's if it's a common coinage or not, but the way you said it is black privilege, is that you've had the privilege of learning both sides, and now you're able to operate in both cultures.
Oh
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
gives you more it's a more well-rounded approach in that sense, and it's a broader perspective than someone like me has had. And so that's been a lot of what I've been pursuing this summer, even is having more conversations with my friends who are black and saying,
Mm-hmm.
what has your experience been, and what's going on in our world today, and how can we make a difference, or how can we further this conversation and continue
Yeah.
to make progress in this space. And then also reading about different experiences and learning from people that have lived very different lives than I have.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, I mean, I know, I mean, I've been to Denver, and actually there was one area, there was this restaurant there's a restaurant somewhere, not downtown Denver, but like there, whoever the chef was or the owner of it was from New Orleans, and they basically made like a New Orleans based restaurant in Denver. But I wonder, especially since I also feel like Denver in general, like the demographics isn't, it's a lot of white. It's a lot of white up there. I know that much.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's a way, especially if you're trying to gain self-awareness in that regard, if I'm not sure if you're willing or wanting to, but I encourage this with all of my white friends, like to go to like black spaces and just like be that minority, and not necessarily like go in there saying I'm trying to be the white savior or anything, but just kind of be there and engulf yourself in the culture, just kind of see how folks are. And I mean, I'm not, I mean, I can't say for sure because I'm not a white person, but like, I can't say that it would be uncomfortable, but maybe just expose yourself to more black spaces with the knowledge of just wanting to understand how it is for black folks. I mean, I don't know how to like say that better, but like talking to your black friends at a coffee shop is different than like actually being engulfed in like, I mean, I know for my boyfriend, he's white, he's just around my family a lot of times, or like I think one of the other ones where he kind of gets a little bit more uncomfortable is when he goes to my church, because it's like all black people or whatever. But like just like being in spaces like that, I find that it just makes things like, and I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable, but like it's definitely a different dynamic, because I honestly feel like everybody personally, every person, whether you're black, white, blue, brown, like they're all the same people. It's just the way that we communicate. It's not necessarily what we say, it's how we say it to each other. And when it comes to like, I know a lot of black folks, we like to passionately talk loud, and you know, like I know with a lot of my white friends, they are a little bit more quiet. So it's just different. But like the thing is, it's like it's just the overall like getting comfortable with how we approach each other. And I would even say this within the black community, like a lot of us aren't necessarily good with talking with white people about certain things, because I would say that we also have the generational issue where like a lot of us weren't educated as well because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and we can't necessarily say our words as best as a white person can, or like the way that we can communicate it to. It's almost like speaking two different languages, you know, like you kind of just have to learn how to speak the other person's language, or at least understand what they're trying to say. I don't know if I don't know if that really like explained anything, or but like,
well, it's good because you're talking about the nuance in it, and I think that's important. Is like, this is a very complex thing, and I love the quote. I can't remember who said it, but for every complex problem, there's a simple solution, and it's always wrong. You know, it's like there's not a simple solution to this thing, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying to improve and grow in, and just embracing it or understanding or being aware of the nuance in it is really helpful. And I think, like you said, you know, living as a minority is a powerful experience, and it could be any type, you know. And I was in LA for about 10 years, and LA is the cultural melting pot of the world in a lot of ways. I mean, it's got every single culture and community in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And I was actually in Glendale for the last couple of years, and I was in Glendale is largely Armenian community, and so where I lived, I heard way more non-English than English, way more, you know. And so it's and you know, I'm like walking down the street, and this guy like is honking, laying on the horn in these two like Toyota Priuses behind each other, gets the guy to pull over. And I'm like, I'm about to see a fight, you know, like this old guy gets out and like walks up to the other guy and starts yelling at him and pointing at him. And then they get in their car and just keep going. I'm like, this is so interesting, you know, like this culture is just very, like, from what I saw, is very like brash and in your face, but they're honest and they're real. And, you know, it's just refreshing. It's different. I wouldn't have expected that. Right.
Yeah.
So you learn so much just by being a minority in spaces, whatever space that is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really powerful encouragement. And I want to continue doing that because, like you said, Denver is very white, especially coming from LA. It's a much less diverse place. So you do have to be more intentional in pursuing that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I feel like we had a decent little conversation on that. And I mean, I'll definitely, if you want, we can talk about this later, like off camera or off mic. But thank you for offering your insight on that. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for opening the conversation. I mean, I am learning every day. You know, I never hope to stop, you know, and I think at the end of the day, if we can just love and see each other as human beings and grow in that and try to overcome the cultural ways that hasn't been true in the past. And I want to just end by saying what my pastor, he mentioned that I thought was a really helpful way, especially for white people that are listening, is that you know, a lot of times shame and guilt is what keeps us out of the conversation. And his whole point was that it is not your individual fault, but is our collective problem.
Yes.
And so by disassociating, hey, look, I don't need to feel blame or guilt for this as my fault, but I need to recognize that this is all of our collective problem that we still face. So how can we work together to move it forward and progress and change and eliminate it?
Yes.
As a goal.
Yes. Well, I know I said I had one more other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is perfect because it actually goes into, because this episode will be coming out like 2 days before election day. And I kind of want to talk about quickly, as self-aware millennials ourselves, what do you feel we as millennial Americans in particular need to work on in regards to communicating triggering like political topics with those of us who oppose our views? Like, how can millennials aid in making sure that shift in conversation happens effectively?
Huge, big topic. Okay, so my wife and I have been talking a lot about this because we have family members on both sides of the spectrum, and this is just, you know, we're kind of I feel like we're in the middle of a seesaw a lot of times. But
I feel for y'all. I'm just like, and especially like my white friends, I know there's like more on like differing sides, so it's just like I could only imagine what y'all are having to deal with right now.
Well, I think we all have to deal with it, to be honest. So I think that's why it's important to have this conversation. I want to lead with a quote by Morgan Housel, who said, "Your personal experiences make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. We're all biased to our own personal history." And if we remember, you know, what we talked about earlier is that your experience and my experience have been drastically different than each other, and every other person on this planet. No one has the same experience. And so we're all operating from our own personal experience, largely over 80%, right? As he says in the quotes, where you can't expect, you know, for me, I think living in LA for about 10 years was really helpful in this, because I can't expect my friends in Kansas who grew up in Kansas and lived in Kansas their whole lives to think about the world the same way I do after I've lived in LA for 10 years. It's just not going to happen, because I wouldn't either. If I didn't live in LA for 10 years, I wouldn't have view the world the way that I do now. And that's not better or worse. It's just different. So I think the first thing to do is just say, hey, we all think we're right. Okay, let's just start there. We think we're right. Now, and we all largely are viewing things based on our own personal experiences, and those are all different. So that's a starting place. And then I think the other thing is that I heard from George Towers, who I had on the podcast as well, and he's a local guy here. He said, we need to be asking for permission to be wrong, because that just levels That just levels the field. It opens up a
Ooh.
space, right? Say, hey, I may
Yes.
be wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Allow me the permission to be wrong, but this
Yeah.
is how I see it now, right? And that
Yes.
just opens up a conversation and not a debate. Because if we're going to make a
Yes.
difference in the conversation, we need to keep it a conversation and not a debate. Debates are never helpful. They really aren't.
No.
We've seen that.
And yeah, no, debates in particular, like, yeah, it's like no one ever wins, really. They just, like, aren't debates supposed to be like someone's supposed to win the debate or like have like better points? I feel like that just never happens.
Yeah, and debates are meant for winners and losers, and that's the whole point. Is like we don't need or want winners and losers. We want unity. And you know
Yeah.
what? The other thing is unity and uniformity are very different things. And so a lot of times we think
Mm.
we inwardly we want uniformity. And honestly, as a kid, I wanted uniformity. I thought I
Wait,
was a
can
good
you
athlete.
define uniformity for the listeners? Just because I know a lot of people know what unity is, but uniformity, they'd be like, what?
Uniformity is sameness, right? It is
Mm.
looking, acting, thinking, talking the same. That's uniformity, right? And so
Okay.
I think like as a kid, I often thought I wanted uniformity because I was pretty good at sports. And I wanted everyone just to be like me. Why can't they just be like me? Whatever, you know?
Uniform, like, okay, like everyone's wearing. Okay, it makes sense now. Sorry, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm slow.
And
Gotcha.
and you know, as a kid, it's very childish and ignorant, but we think that way as adults too. That's why we
Mm-hmm.
get so passionate about these political issues or topics or whatever we're learning or listening to because
Yeah.
we want others to think that way too. And we think that
Yes.
if everyone else thought that way, we'd be better off. And that's not true. There's
Mm-mm.
not true at all, right? Diversity of thought is
Yeah.
what makes us strongest. And
Yes.
unity is only possible through difference. If you're not different, you can't be
Yes.
unity. You can't be united.
Yes.
Um, so I think the conversation that we all need to be furthering is how can we be united? Not think the
Mm.
same way, not believe the same things, not have the same political views, but how can we be united despite our differences?
Yes. I love that. Sorry, like, oh my gosh, sorry. Oh,
And you know,
can,
and the cool thing about it is we all can do that. We all have a role to play in that. No one can
yeah.
sit on the sidelines. If this is going to happen, if we're going to shift the tide from this growing divide into a greater unity, we have to each of us play a role in it. We have to be engaged. We have to enter in conversations we don't want to because we know it matters and it will make a difference when all of us collectively are doing that continually over the years ahead.
This is a perfect example. I just thought about this, and I don't think I've ever actually mentioned this on the show before, but I had a conversation. It was a really bad day. I remember like going to the bar and drinking, and I went to a bar and like there was like these really drunk white folks. They were like older, middle aged, and they struck up a conversation with me, and I was like, okay, fine. And I remember we started talking about race. And I was like, I'm like the only black woman around. And, I was just like, well, here we go. I'm already like inebriated anyway. So whatever comes up, comes out. And I remember telling this person, we were talking about the fact that I think they were like, I don't see color. I don't see color. I don't see color. And I'm like, you don't? Really? And then I was like, so what? So, okay. And then like, but the conversation I was having with them wasn't like, I wasn't like yelling or anything. Like I was just like trying to understand intently, why they felt this way. And I remember saying, I was like, well, if you don't see color, then what do you do when you stop at a stop sign or I'm sorry, like a traffic light or whatever? Just like giving them a tangible example. And I don't remember if I had all the words at that point, but I think what I was trying to get across to them is that like color is beautiful and color, you can see color. It's nothing wrong with that. You can see those differences and find beauty in it and like embrace it. Don't say that you don't see it because like my color is important right now. This conversation that we're having, the reason why you even said that to me is because our colors are different.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, when
Yeah.
you said that was what came into my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be sticky. It's not going to be perfect. And I think showing ourselves grace in that of being like, look, I'm going to make missteps. I'm going to say the wrong thing sometimes. But give me the permission to be wrong. Give me the permission to change my mind. Because guess what? it's actually a healthy thing to change our views and beliefs. It means that we're growing. If you're not,
Yes.
Muhammad Ali has one of my favorite quotes of all time. He said, "The man who views the world at 50, the same that he did at 20, wasted 30 years of his life."
Whoo, yes.
And
Yep.
so, like I guarantee you from this conversation today, I'll probably see something a bit differently a year, 10 years down the road. I will, and
Yeah.
probably you too, and hopefully all of us, because
Oh,
that means we're
definitely.
growing. That
Yeah.
means we're actually progressing and expanding and learning. And I think too, the other part of the conversation that is really powerful, I've thought about it a lot because it's hard to do. And I can't remember who said it, but they said not taking things personally is a superpower. And I'm really trying to wear that
Yes.
superpower or learn that superpower a lot more, because if we can just not take things personally and just be like, look, this isn't personal. I know that, but you believe this strongly, whatever. Uh, just not taking things personally helps so much. And it's so hard because we operate out of our hurt. And when someone says something that's
Yes.
hurtful to me, I then usually come back with something that's defensive, argumentative, or maybe hurtful to them. And it's a downward spiral. But I can break that spiral by just not taking it personally.
Yeah.
Um, and we have to be aware enough to do that. And it's a practice, it's a discipline. And it's hard because we do have a lot of emotion usually tied into these things.
Yeah, that's like I think about this all the time. Like when I see people wearing symbols that usually don't represent like that they really care about Black people, if you know what I mean. But I'll see them, or I'll see them wearing the hat, and I'm just like, I don't take it personally because I'm just like, they're on their journeys, and I know who I am, and I just kind of, I don't know, I have to forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take it personally, because if I keep taking every single thing personally, that's the issue. Like you're worrying about others at that point. You're not really worrying about yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not necessarily worried about you at that point either. Like they're gonna do what they want to do. So you like don't give them extra energy. The energy that don't give them any more of your energy that they're gonna give to you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And the way we can be a part of the change we want to see is by being above, being separating ourselves from that cycle. It's not saying we're better than, right? It's saying
Right.
that if I engage in this cycle, I'm going to perpetuate the cycle. But by not
Yes.
engaging in it, by not taking it personally, by choosing to go down the path that I don't want to go down of not taking it personally, then I can be a change maker, a change agent in this conversation. And it may just be planting a seed that gets, a fruit 10 years down the road that we don't see, but just planting the seed is all that matters.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I really appreciate this conversation, Thane. I wish that we could have talked longer. Like I could have made this a two-part. We had like a 2-hour discussion, but I'm trying to keep this at least an hour so that folks can do what they do, and they will actually hopefully want to follow you and on your various means of social media platforms. Oh my goodness. Like I kept looking and I was like, dang, there's another website. Oh my gosh, there's like another course. And you have 2 books out, right? Right
Mm-hmm.
now?
Yep.
You want to just talk
So
about that a little bit?
yeah, the first one was about quarter life, kind of like you talked about. It's called
Okay.
From Here to There: A Quarter Life Perspective on the Path to Mastery.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun journey that came out in 2018 at the end of my golf career. So that's on Amazon, the ebook, audiobook, all that, or my website. And then the one that just came out this year is now right now available for free on my website. And I'll have it on Amazon probably in the next month or so. But I wanted just to get it in people's hands first. And
Mm-hmm.
it's called Catalyst for Hope: Unlocking Energy, Optimism, and Your Full Potential. And that's really the whole point, is to be more, unlock more hope in people's lives so we can stop being hopeless and be more hope filled or hopeful. And I think that's
Yeah.
available for all of us at any time, just by shifting our perspective. So that's the second one that's out now on my
That's
website.
actually
And
really important, especially right now in 2020. I feel like a lot of people are feeling hopeless because of just everything that has happened this year. So I'll definitely make sure I'll post that online just so that folks can have that, because I know so many people right now that probably needs to read that.
that's
um,
the hope. And I want to be an encouragement. So that'd be great. And thanemarcus.com/hope is where they can get a free copy. So
awesome. And you also are doing a self-awareness course. Is that right?
that is, I'm doing 2 online courses. One is called Take Ownership, Growing Self-Awareness. Like we talked about today, it's giving people a process and then tools. It's 8 weeks, and I'm excited about it. The second one's called Never Settle, Developing Discipline. So it's all about growing discipline in our lives. And I think that self-awareness and discipline are the 2 key core competencies for becoming good self-leaders. And really, like,
Yes.
I'm all about how can we create more self-leaders, because we're so often we get wrapped up in like being a good leader of others. But more importantly than that, if that's going to be sustainable or beneficial in the long run, we have to be good leaders of ourselves.
Yes.
And so these are geared towards creating more self-leaders, generating more self-leadership, to make us better leaders of others eventually.
I love that. See, my issue right now is I feel like I feel like I'm a self leader, kind of, but I need more discipline. I might need to take your course, Thane. I might have to take your course. Oh gosh. Well,
Discipline's a hard one, so I think we're all with you.
okay. Well, what is your social media handle so everybody could follow you?
At Thane Marcus is all the socials.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, y'all, if you have any suggestions on future things you'd like me to cover on the Self-Aware Millennial, please email the selfawaremillennial@gmail.com, or you can follow and DM me on Instagram at the Self-Aware Millennial. If you're on Apple Podcasts and you feel like giving your girl a little shout out, feel free to leave a review or give TSAM 5 stars or however many stars you feel TSAM. I'm not going to judge you, but 5 stars is great. And if you're all caught up and you're itching for more self-awareness clarity, join my Patreon, where you will find bonus episodes, video recordings that didn't make the show, and a bunch of self-reflection excerpts from yours truly, because I've been going in like, this seems like every single week something comes up. Like just now, before we started this recording, so I do a lot of roller skating, right? And for the first time, I was like going to try to like take the bearings off and get them cleaned and everything. And I ended up messing up one of the bearings. So I need to buy like a whole new set of bearings, because the bearings that I had on my skates, they are like you can't go inside and like clean the insides, because they're like put together. They're very, very cheap. And so I got to get new bearings. So like, I was just like thinking about all that, and I can't even go to the store today because this hurricane's about to come through. So I'm supposed to be going skating tomorrow, and we're going to do like a little Halloween skating situation. So I'm just hoping I can get the new bearings on by tomorrow. Anyway, back to what I was trying to tell y'all. Let me close this out. So we got also at the end of this episode, I'm going to have a little 5-minute bonus clip from the last Patreon episode that just premiered as well. So thank you so much, Thane. It was so nice to have this conversation with you and just get to know you. And hopefully this won't be the last conversation. I wish you the best in your endeavors. Like, you are entrepreneur goals.
Thank you.
Well,
you're very kind. And you know what? I am just another person on the journey alongside you and everyone listening. So we can, I just want myself and all of us to take ownership and never settle and keep striving to be faithful. So thanks for having me on. And this has been a blast.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all so much. And I hope that y'all have a great week. Happy November. And we are going to get through this year. Have a great week, y'all. Bye.
Later.
When I was having sex, I knew that I was feeling somewhat of the same orgasm that I would feel when I would masturbate the way that I do, and I would come then. But it kind of felt more powerful than what I would get from just ejaculating. So I was like, and after a year of, for lack of better terms, being a hoe, and having sex with a lot of men in a lot of different ways, I was just like, I am orgasming. I'm having like a full body orgasm, and like having that, like I said, that like feeling like I can't do anything after. Like,
yeah.
My body is weak. You
seen the unicorns. They were
there. There were sparkles. There were stars in front of my eyes, and it's just like I felt an orgasm, and I felt good. Mm-hmm. I just did not ejaculate.
Yeah,
because I feel like that's just that is a physical reaction that is like unnecessary. Like it's extraneous. Like it's not something I need. I don't need to do that. That is literally the physical reaction of stimulating the penis to get it to eject.
That is so interesting.
That's
I get it.
how
Like I get
that's how
describing it. I get it, but like because I don't like that doesn't happen to me. I'm just like, but I understand where that's coming from.
Right, and that's how I explain it to myself, and that's how I explain it to other people. So that because for a long time I felt weird. I felt like I was weird and odd for not coming during sex.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, like that's.
So you can like choose not to do that. That's what you're basically saying. You can choose not to.
Well, okay. So there are times where the orgasm and the ejaculation could be connected. So like,
yeah,
literally fuck the cum out of you. But that has yet to happen for me. I've gotten close to that once.
What?
I've gotten very close to that only.
Someone can fuck the cum out of you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have to go back. Like I had to think about this.
Yeah, let's backtrack. Yeah. So, I mean, because that.
How does that work?
So that ties into so like men have the prostate.
Yeah.
And that's basically our G spot.
Yeah. And that's where the cum at, right?
No, the cum is in our balls.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right, in the balls. Sorry.
But that is but that prostate is very much like connected and tied to organs.
Yes.
And prostate is located very close, like right by your anus.
Yes.
Hitting that multiple times in a good way.
Yeah.
Can get your testicles to working up some semen.
Oh, gotcha.
And then because you're in the act of sex, because like you're fucking someone, even if you are the bottom, you are getting aroused. So then, well, ejaculation can happen whether you're hard or soft. So
that's true.
You just you get the cum fucked out of you.
So,
but I feel like that involves a lot. For me, involves a lot of foreplay.